My name is Ron Haviv. I'm a freelance photographer. I've spent much of the last 30 years documenting conflict and post-conflict with a primary focus on trying to raise awareness about human rights. In 1991, I read a small article about this place called Yugoslavia. There were these rumblings and rumors of nationalism, violence, and so on. And from 1991 through 2000, I spent more than 5 years going back and forth covering the different wars that made up the breakup of the former Yugoslavia. Breakup of Yugoslavia was made up of several different wars, starting with Slovenia, then to the war in Croatia, and then eventually to the war in Bosnia and then Kosovo.
And then, of course, we have the major tragedy coming at the end of March and early April with the beginning of the armed conflict in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
At that time, though, the rhetoric and tensions were building in Bosnia, and people were expecting that there perhaps was going to be another war in Bosnia unless there was intervention either diplomatically or militarily.
Od Vlade Republike Srbije zatražio da izvrši sve pripreme za formiranje dodatnih snaga u obimu I veličini koje će garantovati zaštitu interesa Republike Srbije I srpskog naroda.
We were listening on the news about what was going on in Vukovar, Croatia, and I remember that was the last time our family was together. They planned the cleansing in advance, so they knew exactly which cities are going to bombard. They're going to start terror, and they use the media a lot. So that's when it started. In city of Bijeljina, we didn't know what's going on.
Well, the town or the city of Bijeljina is significant for a number of reasons. One reason is that is actually the very beginning of the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. On the 31st of March and the 1st of April, the town of Bijeljina was attacked by the military, or rather paramilitary forces from outside and inside.
By the third or fourth day of fighting, a convoy arrived, trucks, buses, jeeps, and so on, and out came a unit called the Tigers. The Tigers were already very well known as a Serbian paramilitary group that fought under the nationalistic banner of Serbia, and they had been known to be incredibly cruel. I had met their leader, a man named Željko Rastanović, also known as Arkan. I had taken a photograph of him holding up a baby tiger that he had quote-unquote liberated from a Croatian zoo that was now their mascot. And I asked him permission to go with his troops, because his troops, according to him, were there to liberate the town of Bijeljina from Muslim fundamentalists.
I sa svih ključnih mjesta bili su istirani Bošnjaci. Ja sam tada bio na mjestu direktora Svemirskih novina I radio Bijeljine, to je bila jedna firma, I mislim da sam bio posljednji direktor koji je bio istjeran. Bila je
So the soldiers, who I was basically embedded with the permission of their commander, they were told that I was allowed to photograph them fighting and so on. We moved from street to street, from place to place. We wound up what appeared to be sort of in the center of this medium-sized city called Bijeljina.
Vojska, bila je policija, bila je opšta narodna odbrana i bili su Arkanovci koji su marširali u grad te noći. Onda su u četvrtak, to je bio 2. april, u dvorište upali Arkanovci i s njima 2 čovjeka koji sam ja poznavao, sam vam predstavljao. Ja sam ih obojicu dobro poznavao. On je bio u vojnoj uniformi s automatom, naoružan potpuno. Ja sam bio u trenerci i nekim starim cipelama. On mi je rekao da idemo u Radio Bijeljinu, da ja pozovem muslimane da vrate oružje. Umjesto toga odveo me je i predao.
So what the media show on Serbian channels or Bijeljina radio, they were showing one of the Arkans with a machine gun, and the people, and they were saying that the guy that's standing, it's Muslim, and the people who are dead near the houses were Serbs. So they were using propaganda saying that opposite, where indeed none of the people in Bijeljina did have any weapons or anything. They were just regular people, families.
We found lots of civilians cowering, totally terrified. We saw bodies in the streets that had already been killed in previous day fighting. A man, later we found out his name was Harush Zabiri, who was a Macedonian Albanian, a Muslim, who was taking refuge in the mosque. Small, young, terrified. So I photographed them interrogating him. They had brought out a middle-aged couple. Hamieta was the wife, Abdurrahman was the husband. A lot of shouting was ensuing, a lot of screaming. Hamieta was screaming. The soldiers were screaming at me, don't take any photographs. Some shots rang out, and Abdurrahman fell to the ground. But I was able to hide behind the cab of the truck and photograph Hamieta trying to help her husband to staunch the bleeding while screaming at the soldiers and the soldiers screaming at her. As I did that, some more shots rang out and Hamieta fell down to the ground.
Ja sam se osjećao kao da sam upao usred nekog ružnog sna. Odjednom sam shvatio da je zaista stvarnost, da se ljudi ubijaju.
Then they decided to leave, but I realized that I needed a photograph of the tigers in the same frame as their victims to hopefully prove to the world that they were responsible, some sort of visual evidence that would back up what I had seen. So as I picked up the camera, one of the soldiers, who was later identified as Srđan Golubović, who's a well-known DJ in Belgrade, but at the time was an 18-year-old brash kind of kid riding around on a motorcycle, sunglasses on his head, cigarette in one hand, and as I raised the camera, he raised his boot as if to kick the bodies that were lying there either dying or dead on the ground.
जिसे मोहब्बत है वो तो दलील मोहब्बत के तौर पर ये काम कर रहा है और जो मोहब्बत चाहता है
When the photographs were published, I heard a variety of different stories of what the reaction was on the Serbian side, on Arkan's side. I heard that Srđan Golubović was punished for, not sure if it was either for what he did or for letting there be a photograph of what he did. I think this just added to his status as somebody to be feared. He did an interview. He was asked about the photographs. He said that he looked forward to one day drinking my blood.
Killings, torture, rape, plundering, looting, destruction of property. And all of that was captured by the US photographer Ron Haviv, who testified. So these photographs of Arkan's paramilitary force committing crimes is actually was used as evidence.
So once the war in Bosnia was over, I then found myself in Belgrade with the possibility that they were going to come and arrest Slobodan Milosevic, who was the president of Serbia, and that they did. And I stood outside Milosevic's home while his special unit that was there to guard him and as a president and do other missions came in and arrested him. As I watched them march into the house, I realized that this unit was the same unit that had arrested me and taken me prisoner. The Balkans is very known as a place where things come full circle in very strange ways, and that was one of them.
Growing up Bosniak American, the genocide has defined my identity. For one, it's the reason why my community is here in our state. And I also grew up hearing countless stories from family members about how they survived horror after horror in their mainland. Despite the genocide, Bosniaks have managed to establish themselves and thrive across our state.
I think it's important for every generation to have a belief in what they want to happen, what they think is just, the type of world that they want to live in. People standing up, people making their voices heard, and if you can, to hopefully find ways to find solutions to some of these things, to hopefully help them, to stop them from happening again.
No one should lose anyone to such senseless violence. We must commemorate, we must never forget.